Bobby Broyles and Tim McDonald here.
Should be a really interesting matchup. Buckle up. If you're not watching, you got some problems.
Now officially into the second half of the season. Thanks for tuning in. He's Tim McDonald. I'm Bobby Broyles with This Week in CA Football, presented by Geico. 2 unbeaten teams left in conference play, 4 others with just 1 loss. Just 5 games on deck this Saturday, and there's plenty to talk about with the conference title race taking shape.
Crazy to think that we're already at the close to the end of October, already looking ahead to November. Only teams left that are still undefeated in conference play right now: JMU 4-0, and Stony Brook 3-0. I don't know if that's where you thought we would be at this point, but still plenty of games left to be played. It's still crazy to think, though, that you look. There's only 5 Saturdays left in CA football in the regular season. Dukes held on at New Hampshire. Turned into a really good game, but snapped a 17-game regular season home winning streak for the Wildcats. Too much Brian Shore too early. 5 total touchdowns, 4 passing. He also set a career high with 264 yards. Saw JMU kind of have to catch its back there. New Hampshire scored 27 points in the fourth quarter, but a win's a win. We'll talk about that. Stony Brook scored 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns, both on the ground, and allowed 134 yards of offense in the 14-3 win over Rhodey. Wasn't the prettiest victory, but again, a win's a win. Bedell and Gowns both each rushed for over 100 yards in the win. And then Richmond, still standing near the top of the standings. Only 1 loss in conference play, a 23-0 shutout of Villanova at home. A game that we billed as a big lead-up between 2 of the best teams and the 2 defenses that were really good. Richmond shined, though, in that one. 93 rushing yards allowed. That was the story of the game. 222 total yards. Defense rose up to the challenge. 4 sacks, 2 picks. The first shutout for Villanova since 2004. A span of over 114 games. Just absolutely crazy. Wow. Maine picks up its 3rd straight win. All of a sudden, the Black Bears are 2-1 in CAA play. Dan Collins, every highlight from that game, 3 touchdowns over 40 yards. He was just throwing it up there.
Yes,
it was just Madden, just send him deep, hit Y, and hope for the best. But also, hats off to William Mary. You snap a losing streak. You trail Delaware 14-3 in the fourth quarter. It's not looking good. 21 points in the final quarter. You get an onside kick. You get a pick 6 late that sealed the deal. First win since September 17th for the Tribe. Up and down the conference, it is strange just to think how little time there's left, but also that the teams right now at the top of the conference, they're there for a reason. The teams at the bottom are starting to realize that they can get back with a couple of wins as well.
Well, Saturday's full slate of conference games starts at noon when Maine looks to keep the momentum rolling with a trip to Kingston to take on Rhode Island.
In past years, I'd say, well, watch out, Black Bears. This is a game that you should keep an eye on. But 0-3 after the home loss to James Madison was Maine, and now all of a sudden the Black Bears have grabbed some attention, rightfully so. 3 straight wins, 3-1 overall versus FCS foes. Take away the FBS losses, and what if they were FCS? There's a lot of what-ifs that you can look to. But 8 touchdowns for Dan Collins passing over the last 3 games. I think the offense, agree, light years looks-wise different than past seasons. Dan Collins now averages 225 passing yards per game, which is 2nd in the CAA right now behind Kyle Auletta of Richmond. I don't think the offense is completely different and completely going to light up the scoreboard, but Maine's just been getting it done. It hasn't been flashy. It hasn't been overly crazy on both sides of the ball, just been getting it done when it's counted. Christoph Malumba-Shamenga quietly has been leading the CAA in tackles, averages over 11 per game. Rhodey, the setback, played very, very well despite the 14-3 loss. 3-0 lead heading into the fourth quarter against Stony Brook, a team in Stony Brook that plays very well at home. In the first half, Rhodey only allowed 85 rushing yards. In the second half, allowed 157. That says it all right there. We talked about Bedell and Gowns, and they found their rhythm in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. It helps to come back home if you're Rhodey, but I think Maine's momentum right now is going to be tough to handle. First of 3 away games down the stretch in the second half of the season for Maine. That is going to tell a tale and tell us how good this team is.
Shortly after, Stony Brook heads to Delaware riding a 2-game winning streak for a 1 o'clock kick. 2 teams that meet for the first time in a conference clash, while the Blue Hens are now led by interim head coach Dennis Doughton-Carter.
A strange week in Newark. You have a team, an interesting game. Just first of all, you have a team that held a 14-3 lead on the road and lost, and then all of a sudden finds out a day later that its coach for the last couple of years and the coach for the whole season is not going to return. On the other side, Stony Brook, you talk about that 14-3 win over Rhode Island. Might not have been pretty, but it still counts in the win column, and especially in the conference win column. That's all that matters at this point. We talk about changing mentalities for teams throughout the season. We talk about how our team's going to respond, how our team's going to move forward. A perfect example, this game, center stage, is a perfect example of that. The Blue Hens have lost 4 straight overall, come back home under new head coach, an interim head coach, but I think that's possibly going to be a rallying point. You talk about players needing to come back home, needing to switch things up. But how do you snap a 4-game losing skid? You come back home under a new guy, get some new passion, it's really a rallying point, I think.
Yes.
Joe Carbone in the passing offense for Stony Brook, still a little bit of an unknown. Only one passing touchdown this season, but the rushing game found its groove in the second half last week. Talked about over 100 yards from Bedell and Gowns, but defensively too, to give up, really kept them in that game. 134 yards allowed versus Rhodey. Right now, that defense, rushing-wise, is allowing 105 rushing yards per game. We know what Delaware wants to do. Set the tone for the run game. Second best in CA football mark. Both teams rank at the bottom of the CA right now in passing. Seawolves average 120 yards per game. Blue Hens average 84 yards a game. You know what to expect. I expect points to be a premium. Keep an eye on special teams in this one, whether it's punting field position, whether it's kick returns, whether it's punt return. We know about Austin Jr. from Stony Brook. A lot of playmakers. I think special teams is going to play a huge role in this game because we know both offenses love to set the tone on the ground.
Yep, watch for the last 2 minutes. It's been heartbreaking for the Blue Hens the last 2 weeks, turning the ball over. That was returned for a touchdown to lose the lead. The first of 3:30 games features Elon coming off a bye week to welcome Richmond to town on CA.TV.
Homecoming for the Phoenix. Remember, should be a great crowd on hand. Probably going to be one of the best crowds at Elon all season long. 2 weeks to prep for the Spiders. It's going to help, but I also think it's still going to be a very tall task. I mean, Elon played extremely well last time out versus New Hampshire. That was that Hurricane Matthew Friday night game. Lost by 3 points. Basically, the final play, the final drive of the game. I thought Elon showed a lot of guts, showed a lot of courage in that one, and played with energy and wasn't afraid to step up to the challenge. Right now, Richmond, we talked about defenses. That Villanova game last week, it was just a defensive battle, but I think Richmond proved that right now they're one of the top defensive teams in this conference. 270 yards per game. That's number one in CA in total defense. Number one pass defense also helped, and without David Jones, still looked pretty darn good last week on defense.
Yeah.
I'm looking for Elon to show that energy from the first half versus New Hampshire. I want to see if that can carry over. You've had a bye week. We talk about momentum. Does that carry over? But it also, gives you a chance to prepare for the Spiders. But I think if you look at Richmond, if you win this game and if you can take care of business, which on paper they should, but if you can get it done, you can enter the bye week with 7 wins and 1 loss before welcoming JMU to town on November 5th. That's why right now I don't think there's a chance that Richmond's going to have a letdown.
Villanova hosts UAlbany in the only matchup of ranked teams, 2 squads that need to respond quickly after losses last week.
2 squads right now that both probably felt good about themselves last week and now are thinking to themselves, well, not a whole lot wrong, but we can still need to correct some things. Bednarczyk, we saw him get injured last week. That's a big deal for the Wildcats. First loss of the season since week 1. That Pitt loss, that's the first loss. It's been a long time in between. Only rushed for 93 yards in the loss to Richmond, 2.8 yards per carry. That rushing attack for Villanova really had been a staple during that 5-game winning streak. We saw De Silva, the backup quarterback. I mean, the good news is he essentially played a whole second half, so he got the fire under his feet a little bit. He was sacked 3 times. I mean, talking about UAlbany, lost his second straight game. Saw Nevin Sussman led the team last week in the loss at Maine with 75 rushing yards, which is a plus, but Ibitikin Hanks still trying to find his rhythm. 41 rushing yards and a touchdown. Defense allowed 25.5 yards per completion. We talked about that highlight of Dan Collins. That was a big play. 3 touchdowns of over 40 yards. A win here, I think, is equally important for each team. Wildcats head to Maine next week, then host JMU. Great Danes come back home for Elon and Delaware, so pick your poison. Both teams really need a win. Expect both to try to get back on track at first and foremost with the ground game because we know the success of both of these teams for Villanova and UAlbany starts with the run game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if they can get Ibitikin Hanks going again. Ever since the bye week, he's been shut down back-to-back weeks here between Richmond and Maine. We conclude on Saturday with Towson, a game that can be seen on Comcast Sportsnet at 3:30. The Tigers welcome New Hampshire to Johnny Unitas Stadium for the first time since 2013.
We've talked about New Hampshire. Last week it was JMU. They don't play every year, but New Hampshire and Towson, they don't play every year. But it's been interesting. The last 3 games in the series, Towson's had the upper hand, has won 3 straight in the series. Like we said, Tigers and Wildcats both have lost to Dartmouth this season. That's just about the only thing that they equally have in common right now. Towson last week, 2 fourth-quarter field goals blocked. The last one I know was a 50-plus yard kick, but still a blocked kick as time ran out, a tough loss. New Hampshire, we talked about it, was down 42-12 after a fumbled kickoff that was returned for a touchdown in the 4th. rattled back 27 points before
Wow.
losing 42-39. We saw an onside kick. We saw Adam Reese. Wildcats set a new program record, 70 pass attempts and 44 completions. That was between Trevor Knight and Adam Reese. The good news is the offense did move the ball. It was just that consistency.
Yeah.
Malik Love and Neil O'Connor both had over 100 yards receiving. New Hampshire ran 100 plays. The stats were just crazy in that
Yeah.
game. So I don't know if you look at it, why can't they do that the whole game, or why can't JMU I think it was just a weird game. It was just a weird situation. New Hampshire's done a good job against the run all season, but Towson, the last couple weeks, has started to find life without Darius Victor. I think what we've seen Towson develop a little bit. I know it's tough. You come home, on paper, Dartmouth and the non-FCS matchup, you should win that game, but I think you get a chance here to come home against a New Hampshire team that lost to JMU and, in fairness, gave up a lot of points and a lot of yards before that comeback. Really interested because both of these teams right now, yes, they lost last week, but both of these teams right now, I know we say it a lot, but a win could do so much for both of these teams moving forward. Towson has had the hand in the series. I'm interested to see which New Hampshire offense shows up.
As always, all the links you need for Saturday can be found on cafootball.com. Tim, we spoke last week about a change in travel plans for you and Mike, now heading to Elon for homecoming against the Spiders. Tell us about your guys' trip a little bit.
I know.
Coming up.
I feel like we haven't been on the road in a while. It's our first on-campus trip since that James Madison trip to Harrisonburg a couple weeks back. Just looking forward to getting back on the road with Mike. I know this week's feature, I'm not going to give away too many details, but looks at a unique abroad program that the Phoenix have planned for now and for the future that is unlike anything else right now in college football. I'm going to leave it at that. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, you're going to have to, folks, you're going to have to turn into the Going Deep feature story from Elon, which will be next Thursday on cafootball.com. That's all we have for you guys today. Enjoy the game Saturday.